We have the chance to have today with us Alejandro Tamayo, who is a professor in the MAI, in the Master of Advanced Interaction, and also he's a person very important for not only the academical exchange, but also the cultural aspects of this research, where we are all together involved about the new conditions of the space, the new conditions of the architecture, and the new conditions of our culture of information and specialities. And we thought it was very, very interesting to have this interaction between the two masters. This lesson, which in fact connect with the things that we want to do in this seminar course of theory in the Master Advanced Architecture, but at the same time who is linked with your research in the Master in Advanced Interaction. And it's, I think, a very, very important occasion to be together, because in fact we are together. We are together in the same strength, but we are together in the same kind of sensibilities and attitudes in front of the new challenge of today. And is in fact also because this is a very natural flexibility to take an occasion to change a little some of our programs. In this case it was the Master of Advanced Architecture, in other perhaps is your case, and to react, and to be reactive is very, very important in this and to react in front of this occasion. Alejandro is interesting because in his work is very, very, very present how to explain the interest to explore the limits between art, technology, and also how to explain in fact reality, but real domesticity, human exchanges, in fact, everyday life. No? And also, I think this strange mixture in between arts, science, not technology, science, and everyday life is absolutely important for us. In fact, when we found this institute, always I say we were convinced that it's a new kind of society, the society of the information, with all the risks and all the expectative of this kind of changes, of crises, and we need a new exploration in the space. The space in relation with this new kind of society. I think this mixture between arts, science, and reality, in fact, or if you want, human aspects, quotidianity, domesticity, why not real life, etc., interaction between the people is important in the work of Alejandro, is important in all of our research. And well, in my case, I am very happy to have this occasion of interaction between all of the research people of this institute. And well, this very, very difficult equilibrium between creativity and rigor of technology or rigor of science is in fact our challenge here. How to be artists, the word artist is very, you use absolutely, but sometimes for us it's, I know, but to be artists, why not? To be artists, to be creative, to have the capacity to explore things that we don't know, and also the rigor of the technology, of the science, in fact the rigor of the science I prefer, is exactly our challenge, and is also one of your interests. And well, thank you very much. I don't know if the friends, absolutely friends of Alejandro want to complete our my words, and I think Carlos, in your case.
Okay. No, I just want to say thank you very much. It's a dream for me. It's a dream for us. Have Alejandro in mind, Master in Advanced Interaction, and it was a very nice days. The last days and I think he was a very nice teacher and share this special position when he put the human logic between what we call nature or cosmos and the use of the technology. I think the idea of to use the technology in the limits of our perception is very, very interesting for us. Thank you very much. Welcome, and it's yours.
Thank you very much to Carlos, Xavi, the Master in Advanced Interaction, to the directors of IAAC for bringing me here to cross the pond. I'm very, very happy. I'm still incredible, but I'm still a little bit of jet lag. But it's getting better. I think I'm going to be ready once I have to go back. My jet lag is going to be over. But anyway, so I have made this talk in a special way. This is the first time I'm going to put my work in this, like in this order and this selection of works. I basically put a filter into my work in terms of the technology that I've been using. And basically I selected works for the past 10 years. So I tried to collect different works because in each of them I found that there is a new approach for me in terms of technology. This is not something that I thought when I was doing the work. I basically work in a very intuitive way. I don't have like this idea of I'm going to use technology in a different way, and I just do things. And then for me was very special opportunity to think about my own work in terms of the different types of approaches I've been taking to technology. So how I'm going to do it is I'm going to explain probably 4 different projects if we have the time. And I welcome you to ask questions at any moment if you want, or we can also wait at the end and have a global discussion. It's up to you, according to the time. So I'm going to start with this image, because for me it was the first approach to technology, and the first technology that I was using in a creative way was a camera. That was my first approach to technology. And I have to say that I'm coming from a territory of engineering. My father wanted me to be an engineer. That was not my choice. So I had to go to engineering. And during that time, the way how my teachers were driving me to the use of technology was for me very boring. I had very hard times going to engineering. But then I took the decision to move. I began taking photography classes, began developing my very modest portfolio, having my intuition as just trying to be connected with my own voice. And this is one of my first works I did using photography. This work is probably 10 years old. I did this when I was in Montreal. I studied engineering in Colombia, and I moved to Canada. And there I began exploring photography in a more deep way. And in this work, now that I was looking through my work, I realized that what was very interesting for me was using the camera, but using the camera to see something that I was not able to see with my naked eyes. But at the same time, it tells more about sometimes I get very worried about the direction that humanity is taking with technology. So I was seeing this work as both of that. I wanted to use the camera not just as a projection of my eye, but also as an extension that can see something beyond my eyes. So I thought about how if I can see the person from different angles at the same time. It's kind of called the Mercator projection. That is the same thing that is done to the Earth. When you take the Earth, which is a sphere, and you open it and you make a flat image. This is the same thing I did, but an image of the face. So in this case, I was using technology, I was using a camera, and I was using the camera for what the camera was supposed to do, for taking photographs. So this is my first approach. But I also, in a way, switched from photography. I did photography in a very passionate way, I would say, for probably 4 years. But something in me was pushing me outside the image. I wanted to get more connected with that everyday life with objects and not just a representation. Just trying to get more into the space and maybe sound. So this is one of my other projects. At that moment, that was for me a departure from photography. This project is for 2005. And this project was, my approach to technology was different because instead of using existing technologies, what I was doing, I was subverting existing technologies. And what I was using is, in a way, I was very inspired by the work of Jagadish Chandra Bose, who was an Indian scientist who became very interested in plants. And he developed a technology I'm going to show you later. That technology, he called it the crescograph. And that technology for him was, it started as an idea to observe the growth of plants in real time. It's something that we cannot see. We can see an animal moving, we can see when we move, but we cannot see when a plant is growing. So this person developed a technology in order to see a plant growing in real time. And when I came out with this technology, I was very surprised because I found that it was very poetic. So in my case, I didn't want to follow exactly that path. For me, that was a starting point, that was a very inspirational point, but that idea started to get into my mind, and I began thinking about technology as, for example, a poetic telescope. Instead, and I would call a poetic telescope because for me technology is something that allows me to see beyond, but it's not just as a telescope that I can see reality, but I can see something that is even beyond. So in this work, what I want to use technology for is to see something that we cannot see. And that's what I was very interested, and I am still very interested, is in the actual rhythms of birth and death. So I became very obsessed with that. And normally my work starts from a question, even though sometimes I'm not able to verbalize the question. But in that time, the question for me was very simple. And my question was, how often do we born and how often do we die? And when I say we, I mean the human race. So I was starting to ask, okay, how many people are born? And how many people are dying right now? And I developed a technology to show that in a way like Jagadish Chandra Bose, but I was not interested in accuracy. I was more interested in the idea of that. I was more interested in the, let's say, conceptual idea of a technology that allows me to see every time a person is born and every time a person dies. So I began doing research and found that in fact we came up with certain figures to tell me how many people are being born and how many people are dying. And I was very surprised when I found out. That number, that was the name of the exhibition I did, 2.3 per second. 2.3 per second is the difference between how many people are being born and how many people are dying per second. And that was 2005 when I found out that. I've been monitoring this, and every time I do an exhibition, sometimes I think is the work I've been shown more throughout my time. And usually I make 1 or 2 exhibitions about this work every year, so I get connected with this rhythm, and the rhythm is more or less the same. Overall, I can say that the rhythm is 4 people per second being born and 2 people dying per second. That means that every second there are 2 more people in the planet. So I was very, very interested in that, and I began using already existing technologies to show that. So I developed, that's when my engineering background came back, and something that I found very boring during my time, that was electronics. In a way, that was very interesting now because I was able to develop my own circuits, and that was completely different to what I was told at university. At university, I was told to do the technology in a very affirmative way, but in this case, I was very excited about using the same technology that I was told to use basic electronics and circuits, to use it in my own way. So what I created was basically 2 little boxes. One box, the one on the left, is connected to the rhythm of the death rate. So I calibrated the circuit to open and close the flow of electricity at the rate of the human death rate, who was 2 deaths per second. And I used another box to put another circuit that was calibrated at the birth rate. And I connected these 2 boxes to 2 different objects. You'll see. So this is one of the objects. The object is a hairdryer, and I connected the hairdryer to the circuit that is connected, calibrated with the death rate. And in a way, I was playing with the idea of the last breath. So you'll see it, and the other object was connected to a light bulb. So I'm going to show you a couple of videos. You can take a look. Oh, sorry, this is not what I want to show right now. I prefer to show. So this is the circuit that works at the speed of the death rate. So every time it turns on and off, a person is dying in the world. The information is taken for a page that is called the World Census Bureau. It's an organization that takes all the statistics from the world and collects it and gives you a number. So that is around 2 per second. And this is the birth rate. So every time we hear a click, that's a person being born. I live the exhibition all the time. I thought that the light bulb was going to burn very fast, but it doesn't. Actually, I realized that I only have to change the light bulb probably once a month. So the exhibition can last for a month, and I can change the hair dryer almost probably 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks I need to find a new hair dryer, and almost 1 month I have to change the light bulb. So what it says is the rhythm of death rate of the human race. The other box says the rhythm of birth rate. And this is what I was saying. This is for me very inspiring. This is Jagadish Chandra Bose. He was born in 1848 in India, and he died in 1937. He went to Cambridge University and he returned to India, and I found very interesting that he called his laboratory, he called his temple. His laboratory was his temple, and he used his approach to nature in a very different way how scientists usually are doing. Instead of getting inside nature in a very violent way, Jagadish Chandra Bose was very subtle in his approach to nature. And to the right, what we see is his invention, the crescograph. The crescograph is this technology that allows a person to see a plant growing in real time. And when he said, actually in a book that is called The Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, who made an interview of Jagadish Chandra Bose, he said that if his own technology was applied to a snail, we would see the snail moving at the speed of a train. Now I'm going to move to another project. This project is more recent, it's from 2008, from 2009, and it was inspired by my dad. And also for me, this has been my father has been a big influence for me, because when I was a kid and I was going to school, I remember going every morning to his lab, and my father used to play with metals, with electricity. He taught me how to make electricity with something that was called the Leclanché battery, that is a biochemical battery that you can create. And he taught me how to create a radio with a Galena Stone. So I learned that when I was a little kid. And I think right now I continue doing some of the things that I learned when I was a kid. And in a way, this work is part, I think, is for my father, who died 3 years ago, and these were actually his objects. This is the Galena, this is the coil that he used for his radio, and these are some of the pieces that he had. So I began playing with them, and I created this object. And I call it, again, in the same idea of using technology in a poetic way. So I call it a laboratory to observe the birth of an idea. It uses the Galena Stone, which is the Galena radio, which is a rock, is a stone that filters electromagnetic waves and allows you to synchronize every different radio station. It doesn't require batteries. And I use this other piece of equipment that's the one that allows you to boil water. And then to have like this, when the water boils, then you can have probably a drop. And when there is a drop, I use a sensor that probably will trigger a light bulb. And I did it because my father was very, very interested in me going to engineering, because he thought that I was going to be doing very useful things. And in a way, he helped me at the end. He was helping me with my work. So I think he might be laughing when he's saying this. I'm going to show you another project that started in 2006, and this project started with a dream. I had a dream, and this is my dream. I imagine fruits communicating between each other, connecting all of them, a banana, a pineapple, an orange, and from this communication of different fruits, a consciousness emerging, like the same idea of a consciousness between brackets emerging from a computer. Like when you create a software and you create an algorithm, or when you're learning a new language, the first thing you do is the hello world. The hello world is why you write the first piece of code. So I imagine a hello world, but instead of having electronics and pieces of equipment like that, I imagine like every fruit was going to be that part. And it was just requiring any number of fruits to create this consciousness. So that was the idea. I thought, in a way, I thought of a computer created with fruits. I call it like an organic computer. So I had that idea. I made this drawing that was in 2006. And then I was accepted to do a visit at Interactivos in Medialab Prado in Madrid with this idea to create a fruit computer as an open laboratory. But before that, I imagined this. If I were able to create a consciousness with fruits, probably I was able to play chess with fruits. Maybe fruits are great at playing chess. And this is actually what I sent to apply for the residency. I sent this image that is a way of representing fruits in a very different way. I'm not going to eat the fruits, I just wanted to play chess with them. And the laboratory began. This is at Interactivos in Medialab Prado. This is 2009. And I was very lucky because I had a very interesting and a great group of collaborators. On the left is Andreas. Andreas went to architecture, but Andreas went also to chemistry. So he's an architect and a chemist at the same time. So when we read the work, he said, a fruit computer, this is so strange. And probably he wrote and said, maybe you can do that with the pH levels of fruit. And I asked him, okay, do you want to be part of the group? He said yes. So he traveled he was, at that time, I think he was in Paris or in Switzerland. I can't remember. So he traveled and we met in Madrid and we began the project. And we began using 2 different fruits and being able to get the pH levels of fruits in order to create a binary system. So this binary system was to be created. This is another collaborator. She's Kelly. Kelly was coming from the United States. She was doing her master's degree in arts, but she was very interested in biology. So she came also as a collaborator, and she was great because she was kind of putting everything we were doing in the lab. She was mentioning in different blogs, and one of the blogs was the DIY bio blog from Harvard University. So when we're doing this weird experiment, some people there told us that maybe we can use DIY pH meters in order to find out, in order not to use commercial pH meters, but DIY that could be, we can make many of them. So we began trying to create DIY pH meters in order to create this binary system. So this is one of the first prototypes we created, in which we were creating the binary system using lemon and tangerine. When we added drops of lemon, we changed the pH level of the water, so we were able to identify that. And when we added drops of tangerine, the pH level changed, so we were able to identify another. So in a way, that was a binary system. It was difficult to change from one to the other many times. So the next step was to find probably not too acidic fruits, but probably try to find a fruit that is not as acidic. So try to find alkaline fruit. The project is still ongoing. I've been working with, I would say, probably 7 to 10 different biologists, chemists, artists, engineers, and it's a work in progress project. I think the important for me is that probably it will never be done, but in a way it's something that reflects about how we create technology. Because if we are able to create a fruit computer, the computer probably is not going to be very fast, probably is not going to be too accurate. But in a way, it questions the history of computers. The history of computers is war. The history of the computers are coming from attack and defense mechanism. So in a way, my work was inspired by the fact that maybe we can create new technologies, but in a poetic way. So I imagine this system in which we can store letters, in which we can store a sentence. And because it is an organic medium, the medium is going to disintegrate over the passage of time. So if, for example, we create the word and we store the word hello, but after 2 days or 3 days or 4 days, that word is not going to be stored. Maybe something else is going to be there. I don't know what. And also, if we were able to determine how the word and how this is going to behave over time, maybe we can make the opposite. Maybe we can write down a word that we don't understand, and the message is going to emerge over the passage of time. So here is the work. This is the binary digit. It is for just 1 bit. Now we have USB sticks that have, I don't know, 4 gigabytes, 8 gigabytes, and that is just 1 bit. This is just 1 organic bit. And that bit could cost probably, I would say, 65 euros. That's 65 euros for a bit. Maybe it's too expensive for just 1 bit. But this is the same project that I started in Colombia. This is at the Botanical Garden. And I continued the laboratory. Instead of a static work, what I did was I installed it and I asked people to join the lab. So I asked people who was going there, the general public, kids. There were some engineers going and helping to the work. So I established this laboratory for a week. And for example, I think Juan, he was 7th semester of electronic engineering. And he said, wow, I never thought of that, and no one told me that we could create a computer with fruits. I said, well, I didn't have that idea even myself, but now maybe it's possible. So he began doing some ideas for me that could probably make this computer a reality. I still don't understand what he was doing. I collect and I keep the book, the notebook with me, because I think there's a lot of things very interesting that people wrote. So it's an open laboratory. And there we were trying to create the PhD meters with Christmas balls. That's a feedback we got from people from Harvard University who said that using a Christmas ball, we can create a selective proton membrane that allows protons to go through it and sense the difference between the pH levels of 2 different substances. So it became very, very deep into the nature of matter. For me, I never thought of what is pH. I had no idea. Now I know, I have more questions, I think. I still don't know very sure what it is. So now I'm going to enter to the last type of projects that I've been doing. This is the projects that I've been doing, I would say, for the past 2-3 years. And it all began with this. As you all know, it's the Northern Lights. This is an image of the Northern Lights in Alberta, in Canada. And I became very obsessed with the Northern Lights. For me, it was something beyond just the phenomenon. For me, it was kind of a connection between magic and nature. For me, it was something that was beyond what I was able to understand. The Northern Lights was very, very inspiring. So I began doing research about, okay, what are the Northern Lights? How are they being created? And I found out that the Northern Lights happen because they are the impact of matter coming from the sun. So basically the Northern Lights happen when we have a solar explosion. And when we have a solar explosion, we have matter coming from the sun and hitting the magnetosphere of the Earth. And that hitting of particles that are coming from the sun, when they hit the magnetosphere, they create the light. That's why they are kind of dancing, because it's matter that is arriving to the Earth. So in a way, it's if we use the, let's call it the mechanic metaphor, it's kind of a sensor. The Earth becomes a sensor for solar explosions. So if we go to the north part of the Earth or to the south, and we want to know if the sun explodes or not, we can see it because we can actually visualize. So the Northern Lights are a type of natural sensor for cosmic explosions, for solar explosions. So I became very interested in solar explosions. So my attention switched from the actual lights, which I find very inspiring and poetic, but I became very interested in solar explosions. So I began trying to find a way to get connected with them. But I had no idea how to start. So I had no idea how can I know if the sun explodes or not. So I began doing research, and a friend of mine who is an astrophysicist, whose name is Jaime Forero, suggested me to go to a group that they used to gather in Bogota, and they were creating a radio astronomy group. And they were doing research about a DIY radio antenna. And that antenna, if I select the appropriate range, could tell me if the sun explodes or not. So I was able to use it for whatever I want. So I began going to this group. And at the beginning, it was very strange because all of them were scientists and engineers, and I was coming with an interest in poetics. So they asked me, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, it's because I want to find a poetic way to show solar explosions." And they they say, okay, this is kind of a crazy person, but he doesn't seem very dangerous, so let's allow him to stay. So I was able to stay in the group, and I began being friends with just one of them. I don't think all of them, from 10 people that were going there, just one was interested in finding that poetic way of showing of showing solar explosions. So we began, I would call a friendship and not a collaboration. I think the relationship between our practice and scientific practice is not just based on the word that is very common now, a collaboration. I think beyond collaboration, I think is friendship. So we became friends, and we began going for coffee, for beer, and discussing questions or our position in the Earth, in the cosmos, in society from different angles. He went to a complete different background. He had a complete different background from me. He went to engineering, and from engineering to physics. And he is a researcher for the International Center of Physics. I went first to engineering, but then I entered the art school in Canada, and then I went to a master in fine arts. So I was in a way with a different set of questions that an engineer and a physicist we have, but we get together and we had amazing discussions. So we began this collaboration, and one day he told me, I think I have something for you. And he gave me as a present a piece of code. And for me, it was amazing. He created an algorithm that was able to communicate with an open source. It's not an open source completely, but it's a satellite, and the data is open. So he created this algorithm that is able to connect with the satellite. And this satellite has a very special sensor, which is an X-ray sensor, that every minute is taking the information from the sun, so you can actually know every minute if the sun is exploding or not. So that was his present for me. He said, okay, I don't know what you're going to do with that, but this is for you. Use it. And the geeky part, it's made in Python. Maybe you know that language. It's made in Python, but it requires Ubuntu, so it's also a shell script. So it kind of uses 3 different levels. So I say, okay, I was very grateful with that, and this is what I did. The algorithm is running in the computer, which is actually the same computer. And every time the algorithm detects that the sun is exploding, it opens up, it connects. This is physical computing. So basically, you have the computer, which is connecting with a piece of, it's a DIY microcontroller, like an Arduino, which is sensing and receiving data from the computer all the time. But when this data surpasses a certain amount, that means that the sun is exploding. And if that happens, the microcontroller opens a motor, like a mechanic motor, that moves a valve, and the valve opens up this gas cylinder and creates this huge flare. When there is not explosion, when the sun is not exploding, what we have is just a small, little light, very small. So in a way, it's also a way of seeing what we are not able to see. If I want to know how the sun is doing, I can go to this piece and see. If the light is small, maybe the sun is okay, the sun is not exploding. But if I go and see, and there is a big light, and there's a big flare, that means that we are receiving a lot of energy from the sun. This is the satellite. It's called the GOES-15. So basically, at the top, it says solar X-ray imager. That's the sensor. That's the sensor that detects in infrared and in X-ray. It detects the amount of energy coming from the sun, and that information is taken and is being sent to a server on Earth somewhere in the United States, and that information is open. So basically, what happens is that the computer needs to be connected to the internet. So what happens is, whenever the sun explodes, that explosion is being sensed by the sensor. So the amount of energy is transformed into data. This data is being sent to a server, and the computer connects with the server and transforms the information into the amount of fire. So it's in a way, it's a natural phenomenon which is transformed into data, and from data it goes back to a natural phenomenon, which is fire. When I was doing this project that I began in 2010, I found out something very interesting. I found out that the sun has cycles. The sun has an 11-year cycle. And that cycle, what it means is that the sun starts creating sunspots, manchas solares, sunspots. And when we have more than two, that means that there is a big chance that the sun is going to have an explosion, because every time there is more than two sunspots, there's like a relief of tension that happens between the two, and the sun explodes and the two sunspots disappear. When we reach this 11th year of the sun cycle, there is more sunspots. And that time is now and last year. So last year, 2012, and this year, 2013, is the time of the 11th year of the sun cycle. So this is the time where we are receiving more solar explosions. Normally, in a time where there is not that activity, the sun can explode probably once every 4 months, once every 3 months, or once every 2 months. When we reach the moment of more activity, the sun can explode probably one time a week, or it can explode even more than one time a day. And when I was doing this, I came across this book. This book is called The Birth and Death of the Sun by George Gamow. The Spanish version has been translated by Ernesto Sabato. And in this book, which is basically an approach to how the sun works in terms of atoms and molecules and microscopic energy, George Gamow also traces something that for me was very interesting. He began saying that during his research of the sun, he realized that there was a connection between human activity and the sun activity. And he began making a connection between social revolutions and sun explosions. So he found that 1911, 1917 were periods of the sun in his maximum amount of activity. So there's no wonder for me, like, okay, we're living a very convulsive moment. We're living in a moment that is very special for us. There's a lot of activity happening on Earth, and the sun is also happening a lot, having a lot of activity. So again, continue with the idea. I wanted to have something more that had more impact. Instead of the flare, instead of the fire, I began playing with gunpowder. And this is actually one of my latest works. I made two things. I changed fire for gunpowder, and I wanted to put the technology inside a box, because instead of being distracted by the technology, what for me was more interesting was the connection or the reflection about being able to sense the sun and being connected with an explosion that may happen any moment and we don't know when. So what I did was this, and I call it 8 minutes. When the sun explodes, we explode too. So basically, what you see on the white, sorry, in the white platform, is gunpowder. And inside the box is the technology that allows to know if the sun explodes or not. If the sun explodes, it actually explodes. This is September last year, and this I did it in the Universidad Nacional, the National University in Colombia, where I had, fortunately, I had a space where I was able to do this. And this is the mark that stays in the platform. This is actually what it's at when it explodes. This is the imprint that you have after it explodes. So it's kind of going back. There's a sun that explodes, there's an explosion, and the imprint that we get at the end is also kind of a sun. I was very impressed because I had no idea what was going to happen. For me, was also like a revelation, like, wow, I didn't know that that's what was going to happen. And when that happened, when I discovered that, I became very obsessed with explosions. And I began doing more explosions. I began trying different explosions, just not waiting for the sun to make an explosion, like doing my own explosions. So I began doing explosions all the time. I began doing explosions on chairs, on books, on everything. And I wanted to show the last part of the last project that in a way is a continuation from this. And I began doing explosions on books. So basically I was leaving a book and just leaving the sun to leave an imprint on the book. I began with a basic green book that it can be any book. For me this book represented all the books. Probably for me, I'm still trying to understand what this represents. For me, probably it's the end of this type of knowledge that is based on books, and probably is the start of a new era where knowledge is coming directly from direct experience and not just going to second-hand knowledge. I love books, but this is what my work was going. And then, of course, there's some titles that I found very interesting for a book. I began going to second-hand bookstores and finding books to put under my system. This is the capital. How much time do we have? Oh yeah? Probably we can open the discussion. This. Yes. Yes. So this is how it is positioned when I've been collecting the books. And this is the setting where you can see the books with explosions. And there's a book that is waiting for explosion to happen. In that exhibition, I put Fernando Botero's big book, just waiting for the explosion. And this is more a domestic work. So instead of all having explosions, I created a domestic version. So this is, let's call it the light version. When there is an explosion, the telephone will ring 3 times. So maybe we can get we can get them, that call, maybe not, maybe if we put it in at home, maybe when the sun explodes and maybe we are outside, we miss the call. I call it the call. We can see what happens is, of course, it's the same computer, and what the computer is doing is getting data from the satellite. So we actually see the computer working and getting this data. And then if there is the explosion, this mechanism is going to make the telephone ring 3 times. And now I want to talk about the workshop that we are doing here in the Master of Advanced Interaction at IAAC. And this project is about thinking about technology from a very broad perspective. So it's thinking about technology in a very wide and free way, instead of thinking of technology as something that already exists. The workshop is about thinking of technology as something that we can bring forth, as something that we can put new, as something that hasn't existed before. So the workshop is about white boxes, and it's also a way to break with the idea of technology as a black box, because we've been using this metaphor for quite a long time, and I think it's time to move away, because of course it has this dark side, but in a way it kind of tells a lot about not touching. You don't understand what is inside. It's the same metaphor that scientists are referring to the human brain. They call it a black box. And in a way, this workshop is about making the black box white. And it's just a way of transforming that idea of, instead of that, let's say, that feeling, let's make this happen. And this makes probably as an open way of reflecting about technology. So the workshop is about the following. The workshop is about creating this white box as a connection between that part of nature that we find and that we still find very poetic or even magic. Is that part of nature that we feel and that kind of surpasses our own senses. When we go, for example, and experience a sunset, or for example, when we go and see the northern lights. And how can we make that to everyday life? How can we make that experience of nature as powerful or as poetic, but to bring that to everyday life? So that's the task. And I know it's not an easy task, and the students in the workshop are having, I think, a lot of trouble coming up with ideas, but I think what we've been discussing is really great, and they're coming up with very interesting ideas now. So the workshop is not about something that already exists, it's something that may exist, it's something, a new technology that may someday exist. So this white box is going to be able to get that magical part of nature, to get that poetic part of nature that is very inspiring, and bring it to our everyday life, but bring it possible. So it's completely, as I said, it's a different way to approach the study of technology, because instead of going to something that already exists, it's going to something that hasn't existed before. And in a way, it talks about technology as that something that is, in a way, indistinguishable from magic, because it's actually bringing magic possible, it's bringing magic to everyday life. And this is one of the cubes. So what we did during the workshop is we created, each person in the workshop created his or her own cube, her own or his own white box. And we were playing during the past week with these white boxes, taking the white boxes to different places, to the park, to the beach, to the metro, to the bar, and have tapas with the white box, home. And we're trying to think about how this white box can communicate that magical aspect of nature, but to bring it to everyday life. And tomorrow, we are going to show the experience of the workshop. So this is an invitation if you want to come. We are going to be working in the room, which is in the second floor here, and the exhibition is going to be after the lecture that ends probably around 9 or something. So there's going to be an open exhibition of the results of the workshop at 9 upstairs. You want to come, you're very welcome to see what we're going to do. So I will end here, and I will just open the space for questions. Any question you have, any comment, I'll be very, very happy to anything you want to say. Thank you.
I think that it's very, very interesting. Very interesting. It's a very, very beautiful exercise and also very difficult. I don't know. I am trying to imagine what to do if I was a student, and I am very interested to realize that, to see the. The other thing is, I was thinking. I'm not sure. It's not a question. It's a thing to share with you. You start your lesson or your about this obsession about the burn and the death, no? But to burn and to death. I think in your work is full of these binary aspects. I don't know how to explain. You have burn and death. I mean, my English is not, but explotado y burn and apagado. Is also when you do with the fruits, this binary aspect is very present. I don't know if a kind of obsession, but I think that you have all these as in the heart. Pop, 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 pop. I don't know, no? It seems that the experiences, because it's very interesting, this aspect, trying to connect the rigor of the technology to transmit experience, a poetical experience, also why not, a conceptual experience, is always manifested with experiences that have this rhythm, no? Pam, pam. But I'm not sure that it's true or is a reaction, I don't know. It's not a, you know, it seems that it's more a kind of, I don't know. It's you think that it's connected with this obsession with the bone and the thing, the white and the black, I don't know, this binary or this dualism of elements, or?
Well, I never thought of that, but I think yes. I think it is, yes. But trying to think of other works is present almost in the work. I use technology. Because if I show, for example, I don't know if yes, I'm going to be able to get to internet. So I show you some of the last work. I made, as I said at the beginning, what I did is I took some of my works that relate directly to technology. That's what I show. So yes, and now I see that they are kind of on and off all the time, like a binary system. But if I show, for example, the last work I did, or some of the last works I'm going to show, that is, for me, was a departure because it doesn't use technology. It's not that binary. So I'm going to show, try to see if I can see it. So this is another work, and I call this work a chair facing the center of the galaxy. And I don't put it in the talk because it's not directly about technology. So I leave this work and other works outside the talk. But that's very interesting. When I use technology, I enter immediately the binary system, the on and off. But when I go outside technology, it opens another space. So it's kind of technology frames the on and off state. But thinking outside technology, something like this may happen. Or, for example, I show you another work that is not binary, but again, the technology is so simple, or I don't know if it reflects about technology or not. Maybe not this one. This work, for example, I call it the heavens. So it's the system that lasted many, many years, hundreds of years of the sun, the earth at the center of the cosmos and all other, including the sun, moving around. So I use this dartboard with that. Also, it's not binary. But again, I didn't include this type of work in the talk because it's not related directly with technology. I don't know how to relate this to technology in a way. So I say, okay, this is not going to be in the talk.
So, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah. I was just wondering, I know nothing about solar explosions, but I was wondering if they have different sizes and if your 8 minutes shows the size of the explosion as well as the frequency.
Yes, it's a very good question, actually. I didn't know that too. And yes, the answer is yes. And they come like in t-shirt sizes. They come as X small, medium, large, and X large. And this is a scientific classification. So basically, I can select the threshold, and I can select which one I can detect. For example, I can say, if there is explosion from, just say, the medium size, make the explosion, or just high explosions, or just the largest explosions. But yes, they come in different sizes. Yes, but it took me quite a long time to find it. But I have a video. It's not very good, but I do have. I can send the video. Yeah, I have a little video. Yes, I do. But I find it.
I would like to ask you how do you make to keep alive projects like, for example, the fruit computer, not the organic matter, but the project itself. How it lives, how could you move it or to expose it to people to work with it?
Great. How do I show this type of work? That's the question. How do I show it?
Not only show it, but to keep it alive. You said alive. It's yes. Like work in progress.
Yes. The way to keep it alive was to transform my house into a laboratory. Okay. So my kitchen became a laboratory. I created I call it a DIY biolab that I was able to fold and open. So I was able to continue experiment in my home. So it's still alive. And when I was invited to do an exhibition of that work, not a long time ago, and what I said is it's a living laboratory. So in order to make the exhibition, the laboratory has to take place and people need to go there and experience. And this is something that we are discussing still, because the curators normally want to have an image or a video, but for me it kind of doesn't make sense because the actual project is the work in progress. So it's the open laboratory.
I ask because I'm a curator.
Yeah, so if this happens, maybe the laboratory will be open in Mexico for a week or two.
Okay, I understand. Thanks.
I have a small question about a small detail for the satellite project.
Yeah.
The data was coming, so you were talking directly to the satellite through an API, or it was mapped to the cloud and you were getting this from there?
When the computer talks is directly to the server, where the satellite discharges the data every minute. I'm sorry?
So the satellite is not sharing its data, no?
The satellite is sharing the data, but you're not connecting with the satellite. You're connecting with the server
Okay.
that takes the data from the satellite, and
Yeah.
it's open. It's
Yeah.
open.
Oh, I understand, but if somebody doesn't know, I mean, what is the like how to access this? If somebody doesn't have, yeah.
I can give you the address, and there is an open. I have that open source, so you can actually. Let me see.
I'm just wondering because it's open data, and if it's
It
not
is.
super accessible,
It is
so
open, but it's not published. It's not published.
Yep.
Like this is open.
Yeah, see?
That's my connection. That was very important. By this, as I told you, the friendship with the scientist. He knew about that, and it's open. But if you go to the art school, it's not something that you're going to learn in an art school. But it's open, and I published the code. The code is open. So if anyone is interested in getting the code, I can just send you the link. I'm gonna actually look for it because I did this workshop that we explore different ways of making visible or audible the solar explosions. And yes.
With this photography of the figure, etc.
Yep.
At the beginning, I thought that perhaps in your project you have 3 levels: the concept, the experience, the project to do, and also the experience of this. I don't know, the experience of the space. And a possibility was to have the photography of this experience. But it seems that at the end we are not so interested in the photography, no, as a format, artistic format, or yes. I think this because, for example, for these Los Dardos or some photographs are photographies of the documents of the experience, but not artistic work. But you start with the photograph. It's curious, no?
Yes.
Because it will be, just
Yes,
to
and I
change
think
with you.
that's a very accurate way to see it, because I started photography as the photography as itself, and then photography became just the medium where I can use to show what I do. I still do photography. I still do a lot of photography, but it's a different way, a different approach. I use it as a documentation of the other work. Yes, that's what happened. Yes. So I'm trying to find the website. Maybe it's this one. Okay, this is the workshop that, in collaboration with the scientists, in collaboration with a biologist, in collaboration with two artists, we organized in the museum in Medellin in order to connect solar explosions and bacterial fuel cells. And that was because I was also interested in knowing what happened to bacteria when there's a solar explosion. So I was trying to connect that. So we created something that is called bacterial fuel cells. Basically, is using bacteria to create electricity. And we developed different, call it, let's say, solar explosion detectors. And one of them that I liked very much, and they came as an idea with some of the students in the workshop, was this. Maybe. This is the one. So I asked, in the workshop, I asked them, what do you want to do when a solar explosion takes place? And some person saying, oh, I want to be able to smell it. Okay, I don't know what to do. And another person saying, I want a candy to come out. So I say, okay, that's interesting, that's a beautiful idea. And we walk around the downtown Medellin, and we found that machine in a pizza place. So we rented that machine and we hacked it in order to make it deliver a candy every time the sun explodes. And there were different ideas. The other one, maybe there's one here that we can see. And this was the final, this one. I wonder if we can see it. So the final project that we developed is that these paper boats that whenever there's a solar explosion, they will fall, and they will fall into a little pool. This is the mechanism that we did. The mechanism is also very simple. It's just this little light bulb that when there's a solar explosion, the light bulb is going to light and it's going to burn this thread. So all the boats will fall. So it's kind of a radio telescope for kids or something. But at the same time, the idea was to monitor that with the creation of the bacterial fuel cells. So in order to know if they are creating more energy or what happens when there's an explosion, what happened to bacteria, and also what happened to us. That's actually my question, is what happened to us when there's a solar explosion? What happens to our own matter? Do we resonate more when there's an explosion? What happens to our molecules, DNA? Because we've been bombarded by solar explosion all the time.
Yes, if in your research, have you heard about the solar explosions having an effect on power grids and electric?
Yes, of course, yes, I have. And actually one thing is, if there is a big solar explosion, I'm not able to get connected to internet, so it's not going to work. So also, yeah, one thing that there's an alternative of using the same technology that is going to be damaged when there's a big solar explosion is to use radio waves. Because when there's a solar explosion, what happens is that we receive the energy, and there is a big wave that appears in the magnetosphere. And if you are synchronizing a radio into that special frequency, you can actually listen to noise, to a specific type of noise. So you can actually use a radio to detect solar explosions. And I think Carlos asked me this before, and if what happens with plants? Are plants able to sense solar explosions? I think yes, but I don't know how, or I don't know if there is a sensor that, I don't know, and I don't know if I want to use the sensor. I don't know right now. I don't know what to do. I think that my approach to technology is changing also. So I don't know, it's still, the idea of a sensor is something that is interesting to me right now. Everyday life. Yes. Yes. Yeah, I think. Yes. Beyond the scale of our perception. Yes. Yes. Yes, exactly. Yes, that's for me like that's what I think of technology as that allows to connect to that other that is beyond our senses, that is beyond our scale, our perception.
Okay, anybody have any question? Well, in the start of your presentation, I say something about put technology in the limit of our perception. I think it's better to put the technology in the limits of our knowledge indeed. And I think this is create a very nice balance between the perception and knowledge, and create in fact a very nice balance between the science and art. And for me it's very nice concept, this balance. We are very agreed. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much for coming, everybody. And see you soon, I hope. Alejandro.
Thank you very much. Hope you can come tomorrow and see what is going to happen with this workshop. I'm also very curious to know.